down to Arizona. It was a long journey because the other British airfields were being equipped at the same time. So we were on the train for 4 days. Went through 13 different states before we got to Arizona. And there couldn't have been a greater contrast if you'd wish for. You can, if you're happy and you want it, and you've got £5,000 to spare, you can do the same journey today. New York to Arizona is £5,000 on that same train. It was absolutely superb. It was absolutely first class in every sense of the word. We were treated like gold. It was wonderful. The food was good. We had a porter to turn our daytime cabin into a night cabin and so forth and so on. So when we got to Arizona after this 4 or 5 days, the Arizona people are extremely, what shall I say, courteous people. They knew we were coming, so they got up early in that morning, got the dusters out, and polished that thing up there called the sun. When we got out of the train after 4 days in air-conditioned conditions, somebody said, "Go and have a look at that thermometer." 105. I think something like, "Isn't it warm?" was the general consensus. So yes, it was wonderful. But what was interesting was that as we went out to America, we were being paid for under lease lend. The American government lent the British government whatever money they wanted to be repaid at the cessation of hostilities. So of course, when we went out to Arizona, the war was still on in Japan. It had finished in Britain, but it was still on in Japan. We sat one person to one bunk, and it was like sleeping in a king-size bed. One downstairs, one upstairs. Every morning when you went to breakfast, you left this as it was. Do you remember this? Every morning when you went to breakfast, it was just a row of curtains down the middle. When you came back, it was a day coach. At night, when we went down to dinner at night, it had been transferred back from a day coach into a night coach. And we had one porter whose job it was to look after one carriage. And there'd be 12, probably 10 to 12 in a carriage. He slept in the ablution carriage which was attached to us. He was a wonderful fellow. He was very reluctant to talk to us for a long time. And every time we talked to him, he was always with his eyes on one particular door. And it turned out that he was, it was against the rules for the passengers to talk to the porters. That was his master. Somebody pulled the microphone now. Can you still hear me at the back? Yeah. Oh, my bother. So we got friendly with him, we got talking to him, and when we got to Arizona, our carriage had a whip round, and we gave him this money as we got out of the train, and it was the first time I'd seen a man cry. Aww. And he told us a bit later on that all the years he'd worked on the railway, we were the first white people. He was Caucasian. He said they were the first white people that had ever talked to him, and his duty was to look after that and turn our beds into nice time and the rest. And he was absolutely flabbergasted that we'd given him a tip. He couldn't believe it. And that's why he was frightened, because he said if anybody had seen him conversing with us like we would, he would have been sacked. So that's how we ended our gap journey into Arizona. We're very remarkable. Really were. But of course, what followed from that was even better. Because when Japan dropped the 2 bombs in Japan, and they sued for peace, that book paid police lend. So the day Japan sued for peace, the American government said to the British government, "You owe us some money. Come on." And we were out there. the British government looked at us lot and said, we're not going for this job. No way, no way. There wasn't another penny spent on us, on the flying school, on any of us at all. We were transported back to New York, and instead of 1 to a bed, we went 2 to a bed. And instead of 4 days, we got there in 3. When we got to New York, they said, we can't afford to put you into army barracks. Here's a pass. It's an initiative test. You're on the house for 5 days. We spent the week in New York, and we could go wherever we wanted to. We were in uniform. The war had just finished, and the Americans really looked after their chaps. And wherever we went for nothing. We slept every night in a different bed in wherever in Manhattan or wherever, and we never once paid a penny for anything. We hadn't got any money anyway. We were told to report back on the Tuesday morning. We reported back on the Tuesday morning. And to our great delight, they marched us down to Pier 86, Queen Elizabeth. So we came home on the Queen Elizabeth. Now we went out on the Aquitania. The Aquitania and the Mauritania were the Aquitania and the Mauritania were one company's answer to the Titanic. And the Aquitania just looked like the Titanic, 4 funnels, 20th century architecture. Never seen a paint of rust, never painted a tin paint since we were made it. And it rocked and rattled all over the place. Queen Elizabeth came back over, and we were dying, and we died. So we had the luckiest of lucky road trips across the Atlantic of any of the 27 courses there were. It really was a first class.
So can I ask you, Len, what you remember about the train journey?
You want my microphone again?
We're on a budget, yeah.
On the train journey, I can't remember as much as Roy, but we were on a train from America, from New York out to Canada, and then on this train all the way through to Mesa. And we were in bunks. We had the top bunk and the bottom bunk, and we were, as Roy said, we were a man in charge of the carriageway, and used to be turned into a daytime tour in the morning and at night. I can't remember a great deal, except that we lost a wheel going down. I think it was either we were I think we lost a wheel, and we were there for about a day until he booked come along and re-changed the wheel for us. That was somewhere between Canada and Mesa. I can't remember very much about the trip. What's that?
That's the wheel. These wheels those wheels were big wheels.
They were wheels.
They were 10-foot diameter at least, but we'd shed it about a mile down the track. And he'd run a mile with that wheel inside of the, more like the desert. It was pretty south of, and the Conrad brother has a bit, but even farther back. And the driver said to us, we were extremely lucky. So, well, there was this wheel. And said, well, were we lucky? He said, just after the wheel came off, we'd come over a dry waddy with a very deep ravine. He said, if that wheel had come off the other side of the waddy, no doubt at all, it would trip the engine into the waddy. So he said, you were very, very lucky. And he took them, there was long before the days of mobile phones and all the rest of it, and it took them about 10 hours to rescue us, because we were miles from everywhere. There's nothing to be seen anywhere. And yet, they must have sort of decided that when we didn't turn up at the far end, something would happen. It had happened. That was rather interesting.
I personally can't remember too much. Recently had a mild stroke, and it does a little bit. But I can't remember that much detail as you can. But certainly, it was a 6-day trip. You say 4 days. I thought it was 6 days. But probably too much time. But it was enjoyable. And certainly the food was good. And they did look after us. And I must say that I found the American people very, very courteous, very generous. They would give us anything that was available. And I have a great respect for the American people as a result of that.
Excellent. So we've now done the train journey. We've actually arrived at Falcon Field now at 4BFTS in our story. And you've brought your logbook today from those days, haven't you? Your flying logbook from when you actually started flying.
Yeah.
So if anybody wants to actually look at that with Len, do take some time to... there are 1 or 2 logbooks around today. I know people have got them, but Len's here to talk you through his, and I think that probably that makes it extra special, doesn't it? You can understand what it means. So what about the training once you got to Mesa? Do you remember turning up there? Do you remember arriving at the station and the train doors opening?
I remember arriving at the station. We were taken out at the Mesa station, and as we got out, there was as we went into the Falcon Field, there was a yellow bus, some little yellow buses. And if you were on one of those yellow buses, you were stopping to let people off. You weren't allowed in American law to overtake. In case of overtaking, you hit one of these people, that's their car. And on the I can also remember is that the day after we arrived, they bought a menagerie of animals that we might meet if we were forced to land in the desert. Things that looked like big rats. And another thing I can remember is they always gave us a salt tablet to take. We had to take a salt tablet once a day. And also, whenever we sat down, the first thing we ever did was to look underneath the chair to see if there was any black widows. Black widows, as you know, is a very venomous. They were very careful because they used to be underneath the chairs, and you had to be very careful. I can't remember what they did about the actual where we ate, but on the chairs, the first thing, wherever we were training or going out to eat, the first thing you do is look under your chair. And you make certain there's no black widows.
Especially the toilet seats.
And Cambridgeshire certainly, I can remember they did have a little bit of tarmac. And I remember standing to attention, trying to stand to attention with their feet stuck in the tarmac. Paying attention. And also I remember that in the RAF, they never used to do very hazardous training. I mean, never did any of this, any dangerous things that might involve you hurting yourself. The idea being that they didn't spend all that money training you to find that you end up with a broken arm or whatever it is. But it was certainly an experience.
Do you remember the swimming pool? Did you use that much in that heat?
Yeah, we had a swimming pool installed whilst we were there. I don't think it was installed for, it might have been installed for course 26. There's a flat swimming pool about 18 inches of water. And we used to sort of run along and dive into this and go to the other side, being watched by all the local people that come and watch you. And we were a bit, all I can say is that we were very young. We were very, we did what we were told, but it didn't do it, tuck me down, whatever it was. If they said do it, we did it. And they certainly looked after us, and I suppose we were multicultural a little bit compared with the modern. As I saw a show the other day about young soldiers and what they do, and they would never do that in the RAF because they would never risk spending all that. But I think it was about, I reckon about £5,000 to train a pilot, and that was probably in England, and then they would never risk doing all that. And if you were likely to injure yourself, I mean, we did, marching orders, but never anything too studious, and nothing really seriously. I'm trying to think of the expression. They were never hazardous. They were always, to a certain extent, we were very well treated. And I must say that I think it certainly affected my health. Because if I'd done what my brothers did in the RAF, I probably wouldn't exist at the moment. Because it was my intention I was intended to join the RAF, but the school was closed because of the war. And they closed the school, and my parents were left with trying to instruct me as a youngster. But all I know is that I had a very nice life and I enjoyed it.
It's fantastic, thank you.
Oh no, I got my flying, well, were you talking about flying?
Yes, by all means, yes.
We came back in the end of 1945 in DJ Day. I was probably about the end, October, November, something like that. So in January, I met somebody else, and we agreed that we would apply for a pilot's flying training course, and we had that. And the only thing we had to support us was our training in America. And I remember saying that we should make an appointment with the RAC. I said make the appointment the first thing after lunch, because they would have probably a very good lunch, and hopefully would be in a reasonable condition, reasonable treatment. As it happened, it was we were some civil servant. We obviously had a nice lunch. He smelled very, very strongly of drink. And I was frightened we might turn around and ask questions about when you fly on civil aircraft and civil aerodromes. They used to have signals, something like they do in the Navy, certain signals which meant certain things. Well, we had no idea being in the RAF. And I remember when this chap asked about flying, did I have any knowledge about private aerodromes, etc. I said, right, yeah, we know the usual things. And that was it. No idea. We got this flying training. That was about 6 months before I qualified, and I kept it going for 2 years. But when I left the RAF, it used to cost us, I think, £10 an hour to fly an aircraft. And I'm afraid that those days, £4 a week. Sorry, £4 a week was about your limit. So £10 an hour was way out of it, and there was no way I could do it. But so my license expired. When we came back from America, I was given the opportunity of signing on if I wanted to make the RAF my career, which I did. And eventually we went to aerodrome called Field. And whilst we were, if I can go back to America, there was a flight lieutenant, Parker, who used to fly people when they were doubtful whether they could continue. They were referred to him for checking to see whether they were suitable. He was known as Chips Parker. If you flew with him, you had your chips. That was and I got to Smithfield, and they said, we're going to meet your instructor. And you know, the first person I saw as he came out was Chips Parker. And I couldn't help Chips, you know, I couldn't help it. And I had Chips Parker flying as an instructor for at least 6 months. So I'm flown with Chips Parker and survived. But he was a lovely man. But I think he was, well, he had a very nice life in America for about 4 or 5 years, and I think he enjoyed it. Anyway, I flew with Chips Parker. They shut down Smithfield, and I went to Church Lawford, which is, they're both aerodromes near to Broadley, and I did my flying training in Harvard. What I can remember is that when you flew in England, there were so many people, so many houses about and various things, you never really knew where you were. And there was a big chimney. It always gave a lot of smoke. We was known as Smoky Joe. And if you were lost, you should find Smoky Joe. And the thing was to fly 030 to Smoky Joe, and that would end up at the aerodrome. So it was several times, but I didn't really know what I was doing. And I found looked for this big smoke, very noticeable. You couldn't help it. Because they never used to let us fly when there was a lot of fog or a lot of low cloud. So it was easy to see that where the smoke came out of. So if you did get lost, you headed for it, then 030 and you were home. Anyway, I qualified in 46. I found, as I said before, that they gave 2 commissions. I worked hard for a commission, but we were joined partially through our course by an Air Commodore's son and Air Vice Commodore's son, Air Commodore's son, and a Brigadier General's son. And they only gave 2 commissions. And of course, those people had the commissions. And the RAF was a bit cliquish. It was cliquish then. It's even more cliquish after the end of the war. So after about a year of training, not training people, but going out in aircraft to check that they were okay. And the only one I can remember is what I used to do is I used to fly down to the end of the airport, and I used to nip into one of the fitters or something like that, and they were looking for someone who used to come in, sit in the front of the harbour, and I used to take them round on the trip because they used to want, and so they didn't have any support. What's the expression for? Anyway, because we used to sit on, I can't remember now. As you fly out, as you go out, and if you ever flew out, you'd move the jet, this taking that used to join, what was it called? Do you remember? Anyway, these people were in front. I remember the last time the cowling on the harbour came off. It wasn't properly fixed up, and it was shoving like that in front of this chap. And of course, I couldn't leave the aircraft because that would leave him alone. So I had to sort of nurse the aircraft all the way around, and eventually I got out and stopped, and he got out and disappeared. And I can't remember what happened, but I must have told him that I had a bit of trouble with the aircraft, and that was that. Never heard any more. Anyway, after 6 months, no sorry, 10 months, I felt there was no future in the RAF because all they were offering you was things like a military policeman, you could be a steward on an aircraft, navigation aircraft over America, which is all that was making coffee. You never going to be flying, and one or two other things. And I thought, well, they weren't for me, so I left the RAF. I think they were pleased to get rid of me. But I must have been very nearly one of the last people to get their wings who, like Roy, joined the war in order to get our wings. But those that were really any good went on to become commissioned and flew. And everybody else, I must be very nearly the last. There were no more training going on in England. We really had enough. It's kind of hard to think of that. What's it you sit on? If you fly into the aircraft, you put a trigger.
Parachute. Ejector seat.
Parachute.
When the jump seat, as a result, as you jumped out, you pulled the trigger and the envelope came out. Parachute. You know, I'm sorry about that, but parachute. And this chap didn't have a parachute at all. He wasn't even locked in the aircraft. He was just sitting there. So I had no alternative but to get him out. But really, I left the RAF. I started as an administrative clerk, and eventually got through and managed to get a scholarship, and eventually ended up as a solicitor. But I enjoyed it. But what all the RAF did was enable me to learn to fly. So put me back about 3 or 4 years. I didn't qualify for this something. I think I was 30, about 38. Was quite late doing it. Well, by the time I qualified and got the matriculation exemption, etc., as you had to get to university. And as I say, I didn't qualify till about 1963, so I must have been 28, 38, 25.
You were at university when I was born.
Yeah. Well, but all the RAF did, it would have been nice. I could not possibly have qualified as a solicitor leaving school at the age of 14. And it was the RAF who created a situation that enabled me to qualify and to take me into that higher realm of organisation. Because having left school at 14, I never thought for 1 minute I would end up being a solicitor. But then that was the RAF.
That was a great story, wasn't it?
Situation.
Yeah, to hear how you got from where you were back to where you are now, sitting here telling us all about all those years ago. So when you were in Mesa,
Yeah.
so what do you remember of the actual training, you and Roy? What do you recall?
Well, all I can remember is our flying. When we flew, we used to fly first thing in the morning because of the heat. It was certainly over 100 degrees Fahrenheit. And we used to fly in the morning and did about a couple of hours flying. And then used to go in the afternoon and after a long siesta in the afternoon to do the theoretical stuff like navigation and so forth, so on. So it really, all I can say is that most mornings used to go off first of all, used to come back, have a rest, have a longish siesta, and go on to tuition, where they used to instructors. So it was flying in the morning, in the afternoon, in instruction. That's how we do it.
So you had different, when some of you were flying, some of you were doing ground school, and you had some stories about that, didn't you, Roy?
The ground school?
Yeah.
Well, I was, as I say, I was a student of an elementary school, so my education was at the very bottom. And the ground school came at you at quite a fast rate. Every Wednesday we had a test, and if you failed the test, you didn't go out for the weekend, you didn't get a pass for the weekend. If you failed it twice, you saw the chief ground instructor. If you failed it 3 times, you were on the train to Moncton to become a navigator. So there was an incentive to do something about it. So 4 or 5 of us who were in the same boat, we started the original program of the quizzing. We used to get under an umbrella and fire questions at one another of anything that we could think about that we were being taught about during ground school. And it was run on a little financial basis. It cost you a dime to put the question in, and you could ask who you liked, whether you liked it or not, etc., etc. And if they answered correctly, they picked up the dime and they could answer you a question, and so on. That's how we did it. And because the test that we had every Wednesday didn't cover anything of the week that we was being taught, it was way back to the beginning of the course. So here we were at course 8, 9, 10, 11, and you're going to get questions which you had no idea which were coming, that you were first taught about in week 1. So you've got to keep it all in front of you. And that took a bit of doing, because normally under normal educational systems, you do a year's course, you do a 3 weeks cram, and then you sit the exam. But the area did it differently. So yes, it was a very special way of doing it. But much as I didn't think much of my ability, I got out every weekend. Cost me about 2 months' time. But I'd like to go back, if I may, because this is interesting, to the train journey. It was sheer luxury in every respect you could wish for, bar one. Now visualize this, ladies and gentlemen. You're going to have your breakfast on a paper mache plate, and a bacon and egg and sausage and baked beans on a paper mache plate. Don't last very long. So by the time you got to the bottom of the barrel, you'll get it at the paper mache breakfast. You got the same at lunchtime. It was a paper mache plate, and it was a paper mache plate of tea. To this day, I can't stand paper mache plates. Now, what was very interesting was, I bagged a lift on the foot plate. Now, think about this. I was on the foot plate of a pretty great big engine, and I said to the girl, could I have a look on the engine? She said, of course you can, go and have a look. And when the time came to go off, they used to go, and then everybody got back onto the train, and away we went. I said to him, can I stop? He said, yes, if you want to. And it was we're just crossing into Texas. And I wrote on this, and it was an oil burner. It wasn't a coal burner, it was an oil burner. And I got an immaculate American uniform on as the investigators. And so I got to be careful what I did. But we were going along quite nicely, and I could see a lot of birds in the field, way ahead, all flying about and all the rest of it. And I said to the driver, or the engineer as they are, what's that ahead? He said, oh, you'll see in a minute. Now, after the breakfast, there was no washing up of paper mache plates. Over the side it went. And because they were going every day at the same time, give or take, there was a local area where it was just a dump of paper mache plates with the rest over breakfast, etc. So the birds were in great fun doing this. But when we got close to it, there was a big notice that said whistle. And he said to me, you can do that. Oh, this is fine, this is great. And I said to him, why haven't I got to whistle? He said, it's got nothing to do with that. He said, this is where the drovers bring their cattle across the track. Now, it didn't make sense to me. We'd come for Well, we're out of sight of anything habitable for hours, and yet they drove the cattle across the specific points. Why? They wasn't railed off, they wasn't fenced off or anything. And I said to him, what on earth? He said, the law says we've got to whistle because our trains don't like having cattle on the bumpers at the front. He said, the cattle don't like having a ride on our train. So he said, so these are the recognised points where if they're going to move the track, cattle, they move it at the point. So he got the job of whistling. And there was nothing to be seen. Well, the cattle fed, I have no idea because there's no grass. And the fireman nodded to me and said, come here, because he was on one side, I was on the other. But ahead, there was a lone cowboy on a horse, driving along, and there was a just trail going behind him. Classical film stuff it was. And when we got near to him, he reined the horse in and stood at right angles to traffic. We were going along here, and he reined the horse in and stood there. He doffed his hat to us, and I said, give him a whistle! That's the way we went. And that's my reminding memory of those train journeys. But they'll stick with me forever. It was sheer poetry. But, the other thing that was interesting then, we never had to wear boots. We were aircrew, so we were allowed shoes. And that didn't go down very well with the ground crew when we were at Killingholme or Rickle, when we were bombing up the Lancasters. The ground crew were all recruits, not recruits, conscriptions. And we were walking and wandering around in shoes, they didn't have boots and all the rest of it, so they didn't like us at all.
I think that you had a closer experience than I had because when your name begins with W, it was B. Mine was W, and they used to put the A's at the beginning and the W's at the end. And I was always on the end, so I had no opportunity of looking at the engine at all. You know, we were engine was miles away.
Well, at least you got on the train. That was the main thing. I did say there'd be opportunities for questions in this session. I could just listen to these guys just talk all day. But is there anyone who's just thinking there's something they desperately want to know?
Question.
Len.
When you were starting your flying and things like that, did the ground crew start the planes or did you start the planes?
Sorry, did we pay?
Did you start the planes or did the ground crew start the planes while you were training and things like that?
The steerman was in what they call an inertia starter. And they used to hire boys from the local high school. Used to come and stand on the wing and wind a handle up, and it went round the big flywheel.
Yeah.
When it had got enough speed up, they'd take the net out, we would pull the ruins, and away we went. But we never started there really. On the Tiger Moth, on the Tiger Moth, that was fun. Because when we were at ground school, you know, the EFTS, the Elementary Flying Training School, the Tiger Moths, when they designed the Tiger Moth, they said, is it necessary to have this? Do we have to have wings? Oh, we better put them on. Do we have to have an engine? Yeah, we better put an engine on. What about a starter? No, you don't want a starter. No. So all you did was you wound the proper, one after the job. You wound the prop back onto compression. Then you got all of it, pull it down for all you left. You were away. And as long as you step back, you were still on your way. And if you step forward, you'd been on your way. Because that was it. The Tiger Moth started like that. But everything else was inertia. The harbour was electric.
But that was the ground crew, right? Like on the Tiger Moth, they would do the prop, or would you do it?
Sorry?
Did you do the prop on the Tiger Moth?
Did you tell him off?
Yeah, did you pull it on the Tiger Moth, or did the ground crew?
No.
So did you have to start it from outside and then jump in?
Oh no, in order to start it, you had to do certain procedures in the cockpit.
This is the Tiger Moth.
Yes, in the Tiger Moth.
Right.
But you didn't in the
You did the actual starting with the propeller.
One thing about Tiger Moth is you have to be careful not to have too much airspeed, too much wind.
Yeah.
Because if they're more than about 30 miles an hour, Tiger Moth needs to go backwards.
Sorry.
Yeah, it was well, a bit more than that, but certainly they never used to fly Tiger Moths in strong winds.
We were a satellite to Outwalthall Aerodrome. But we were using grass field at Wingfield. It was very close to winter. And it was very early on, and it was quite windy. And the instructor said to me, he said, "Have you noticed anything Broadley?" "No, sir." Oh, he said, "Well, have a look down." I looked down. I didn't know what I was looking for. He said, "Have you noticed? We're not going anywhere." I said, "No, sir." So he said, "Well, what ground speed do you think we've got doing?" And if we're doing 5 miles an hour forward, the wind was 15 miles an hour that way. We weren't going anywhere. So he says, "How do you think we're going to get back, Broadley?" I said, "I've no idea." Next thing I knew, he pushed the stick. That's the control column.
Yeah.
And please don't call the control column what do they call it? Pressure glass. Pleasure stick or whatever. He said, don't use our time, it was a stick. It just looks like this. And you just put it back and forth. He said, "This is how we get back home." When the stick went almost through the dashboard in front of us. He said, "Now we can fly." And that was Tiger Moth's. The landing speed was a little over 45 miles an hour. If you were doing 45 miles an hour in the wind, well, but that's not too bad, because as we heard, we had a very, very nasty storm when we were in Arizona, and it blew all the one type of aeroplane. It blew all the lot, and they were all tied down, and it blew the lot into an orange shoot about half a mile away, in Duxford Harbour, because they were tailed down. The steersman was notified, so the wind was flying over the wings. The wind was flying over the wings, and as soon as he got to flying speed, it went off. And the lot blew away. But that's well documented over there.
Yes. Anybody else got a question? Gosh.
How many
Brian.
hours in the steerman and how many hours in the harbor?
How many hours did you fly in the steerman and how many in the
The steerman
harbour?
was through, I think it was 70, 70 something, 68, 72.
We've got a couple of hours in the locker.
Finally finished the primary. Before you got onto the harbour. It was around about 80, 70 something to 80.
And how many hours before you flew solo?
Oh, that was only 8 hours.
I got 55 hours solo,
Yeah, 55 hours solo.
and about 45 hours dual.
You were time right.
50, well, you didn't fly to Harvard. You didn't fly to Harvard.
Very long, did you? Because of the end of your course?
I was extremely lucky. When we finished the primary and we were about to move on to the Harvard.
86.
And the average time was allowed for you to fly solo on a new aircraft. And on the time of if we did the AFTS, Elementary Flight Training School, in 12 hours, you were BMB, Pilot Navigator Bomber. When we got to America, they got it down to about 7 or 8 hours. If because you'd already had that flying experience, you took your first solo around about 7 hours. When we finished the primary course and started the Harvard, I flew it in 3 hours. So your time came down. Because if you learn to fly, it would be learning to drive a car. Now, as you got a better quality car, it took a little bit time, but it went faster and all the rest of it, and you got quicker and quicker to learn how to drive it. Till the end, I mean, when you come to a Spitfire, in those days there's no two-seater Spitfires, so when it came to a Spitfire, you've got to get in it and fly it for the first time with no instructor. So you've got to learn, but learning to fly, driving a car and driving an aeroplane, well, it's the same thing. Once you've learned the characteristics of the car, I mean, if you put me into a Formula One car, I could drive it, but I wouldn't try and be Lewis up. You have to drive a car, so I could do it. And you same with aeroplanes. The operation of flying the thing, it was exactly the same as it is flying 747. Exactly the same. There's nothing else to it. No, there was things. There was one thing to it. If you got it off the ground, you bloody fool, you've got to get it back on again.
There's always landing in the aircraft. It's difficult. They're taking off with no problem.
No.
But landing, especially a three-point landing, was a bit difficult. I found it difficult.
An aeroplane, any aeroplane will take off on its own. If you sit in the cockpit and push the throttle forward, it'll take off on its own.
Yeah.
And that's a 747. But you try it the other way around. Try sitting up there 2,000 feet and say, "Go get me back on." It's a fish, wouldn't it?
So anybody else got a question? Oh, Anne?
Yes, I don't know if I missed something, but when you were learning to fly, before you took to the air, did you use the link trainer? Because if you did, we have one in American Air Museum hangar up there that people might like to see.
Right? So there's a link trainer. Did you ever use the link trainer?
Oh yeah, we all
Link training.
Yes,
Yeah,
well,
we're on the
there's
link trainer.
one here if you wanted to go and look at it in the museum. It's the
I always
safety
I
pack.
got a page for the link training.
Somebody else, was it Tim?
I just wanted to clarify in my own mind. When you started flying in your Tiger Moths, did you do that here in the UK? So you could actually fly a plane before you went? Is that right?
When you started flying the Tiger Moths, was that in the UK, so that you had some flying experience before you actually went to America?
Yes.
My total flying hours before we went to America was just the EFTS, 12 hours, in which to do it with the pilot that was resting from operations. So that was my first flying. Now, it was a long break between then and when we got to America to start flying again, so we're a bit rusty on it. The principles were
Did you all
there.
go to the same
It was just a matter
place
of
to learn, or did you go all over the UK to learn?
Did you all go to the same place to learn in the UK, or did you go to different
No, there's
places?
several of them. The FTS was just
Oh,
the beginning.
mine was in Mesa, but the thing about I forgot what I was going to say now.
Where you went for your initial flying training.
Oh yes, as a cadet, we had to do a flying training in Tiger Moss before they would let us train on.
Yes.
You couldn't do the training until you were able to fly. Then you were tested as to your ability, academically ability. But before you start that, you had to satisfy them that you could fly.
This is what I said earlier on. The differences between the 25 of us, who used to get talking like this, the differences is what I did to what Len did, as you just heard. He had to do some flying before he could learn to fly.
Oh yes.
They said, "This is an aeroplane." "Oh, is it?" And then they were flying. But he got to do it, we never did.
Oh, yeah.
So why did they have so many different routes that took you to that one objective of being able to sit in an aeroplane and fly?
I think it's no wonder we're all so confused about the training. It's different for everyone, isn't it?
I'm pretty certain my dad first sat in an aircraft in Falcon Field, not in the UK.
Oh, right. Right. And what course was he on? Just remind me.
19.
19. Right, okay.
We had another interesting thing here. One of our number, he was a stoker on the Great British Railway, on the Great British.
Great Western Railway.
God, wonderful railway.
Great Western Railway.
He was a regular stoker on the train from London to Penzance or wherever before he joined up. He joined up, he did his grading course, passed it. When we got to America, he'd only got to look at the aeroplane and it was airsick. Come on. And it was a rule, if you were airsick in the airplane, you booked it up so you could eat it. So, poor old Jack, he just couldn't, he never bothered with Bonington, John Bonington. He never did master it. But after about a fortnight, and they tried him with distance instruction and all the rest of it, he had to go home because he couldn't do it. Why did he do flying training 12 hours in a Tiger Moth, which was the most delicate of aeroplanes? I mean, the slightest of wind, you were like that. Why did he manage that? And yet out in Arizona, when it was nice and calm and all the rest of it, he was airsick.
Quick question, before you went into the Tiger Moth, did you ever go into, because I know there's World War II, there's some flight simulators, aren't there? Like little tiny little.
Was that
The link
link
that
trailer. Yeah, did you ever go in there?
was talking about, yes they did, they both said they were trained in the link trailer, and there's one here in the museum if you want to go and look at it. Can I just ask you one quick question?
Well, just now, let me finish that one off. He came back home and he went back to work on the British Railway. And when we got our leave at the end, when we got back home after America, one of our lads was walking down Paddington Station and he thought, I'll have a look on the engine, see who was driving it. That self-same lad was still stoking British Railways, and he'd been stoking the whole of the time we were in Arizona. It's incredible that we could do that sort of thing, but he did.
Can I ask you one last question? This one's from my grandson, Oliver, who's 9. And he wanted to know, did you ever get into trouble when you were in training? I think this is, do you get into trouble at school? Did you ever get into trouble when you were training? Oh,
no. My discharge, I've just read someone to it, my discharge book, the group captain said that this man had an exemplary career in the Royal Air Force. What he meant was they weren't sharp enough to catch us.
I thought you told me a story once about nipping over the wall at Heaton Park.
Well, now there's an interesting one. We're in the Heaton Park. Now, Heaton Park wasn't a park as you know it. It was about 3 square miles of open grassland with nest nuts all over the place. The pilots to me were in this nest nuts, the bombers to me were in those nuts and so on. Because there were so many of us there, the authorities wouldn't allow all the camp to go out into Manchester, which was about a 20-minute train drive. They wouldn't allow us all to go out at one night, so we were put into squadrons. And we had a yellow badge or a white badge or a blue badge or whatever and if it was your colour over the night, you could go out. But it was illegal to go out if you didn't have the right colour. So when you went to the gatehouse, if you got a blue badge on it, it was blue badge night, you went out. There was no good going to the gatehouse with a yellow badge. Get in. We got this 3 miles of brick wall, and it'd be about 8 to 10 feet high. And it was all across grassland. And there's God knows how many airmen. It was a donner of a job for 18-year-old lads who were fit to climb an 8-foot or 10-foot wall. And the railway from Manchester was in a tunnel on the part of Great Britain, and it came out at the British Rail Station. So the technique was, if you wanted to go into Manchester when they said you couldn't, across the field, 3 or 4 of you, each one a leg up over the wall, drop into the tunnel, walk onto the platform, blue badge were out with the tickets, so nobody was looking for anything, and you got a yellow badge on, so you were in there illegal, and you had bought a ticket, and you didn't intend buying a ticket, and that was it. At night it reversed the process. Now the authorities must have been thick, because it was winter. there's probably 3 or 4 inches of snow around about. Now, you cover a field with 3 inches of snow and get 20 blokes to walk across it. Do you mean to tell me nobody didn't leave it for? As you walked along the road, you could see where tracks, and you could see where one had shot off at the distance. And yet, I could never remember anybody being put on a charge for being out at night on the wrong night. But and the interesting thing about that was, I can think on 2 occasions when I was sat on the wall, pulling up, because the first one up sat on the wall and you pulled each other up. And I leaned over and pulled one up, and there was a flight lieutenant's badge. He said, thanks mate. About a week later, I got a flying officer. Well, I'm going the wrong way because flight lieutenant is the one who was flying. But the officers were at it. And I had another experience. Can I go on?
Go on, give us one more story.